Hi, it's Shelly, and welcome to my channel. What are we doing today? As you may or may not know, I'm a snowbird spending 6 months in Mexico and 6 months in my home country, Canada. I have now completed 2 seasons in Mexico, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about the differences between my first year in Puerto Morelos and my second year, and what I expect my third year will be like. I rented the same accommodation for both seasons, as well as the third one coming up. The first difference between the first and second year is my rent increased, as well as the Mexican peso becoming much stronger in relation to my Canadian dollar. The end result is that my monthly rental expenses increased year 1 versus year 2 by about 200 Canadian. The first year in Mexico, I was with my partner, so of course expenses were higher. But I think also we acted a lot more like tourists in our first season. We took taxis everywhere, ate most of our meals out on the port side, and generally just acted more touristy. We sought out other expats to socialize with since our Spanish language skills were very beginner. We took many excursions in the first year as well, checking out everything there was to do and see in the area. I did a cooking tour, we took a catamaran to Isla Mujeres, spent a few days in Cozumel, we went horseback riding, took a helicopter ride, did some sport fishing, and we also took a trip to Puerto Vallarta, as well as Bacalar, and also checked out a couple of all-inclusives in the area. Needless to say, all of these things cost money, a lot of money, and we didn't hold back at all. The end result is that our entertainment budget for the first season in Mexico was extremely high. As I said before, we also ate most of our meals out portside. While the food was amazing, we were paying tourist prices to eat out. Also, the taxi rides to and from portside added to the cost of eating out. The end result of this, again, was that our food budget was very high. When we went for our first season in Mexico, we basically brought our clothes and a few things we figured would be unavailable or hard to find. So when we arrived, we were faced with the task of setting up our household with things that would make it home for us. Let's just say Amazon was almost a daily visitor at our door. All of the things we bought we felt were necessary to maximize our enjoyment of our winter home. After spending all this money and filling the rental with our things, the problem arose that we were going to have to deal with our stuff when we returned to Canada for the summer. The solution we found for the first year was to rent a storage unit and to box up and move all of our stuff into the unit when we left Mexico. And that's what we did. Outfitting our home and moving and storing all of these things ended up again costing quite a bit of money in our first season in Mexico. Some of it was unavoidable since we did need things to set up our home. Some of it was admittedly luxury items that really weren't necessary, but they made the adjustment to a new country easier. We honestly really didn't interact much with our community for a couple of reasons. First, the language barrier was huge. In hindsight, I would have worked harder at learning a bit of the language before actually moving there. Second, the cultural differences in moving to Mexico were huge. And again, in hindsight, I would have learned more about the culture before moving there. We spent most of our entertainment doing touristy excursions and eating and drinking at touristy portside restaurants. Accordingly, we really didn't get to know the Colonia side at all, other than the grocery store and our local fruiteria. The first season in Mexico, we were able to get our temporary residency through the regularization program, for which we were very thankful. We used an immigration specialist for this and paid her fees, as well as having to pay the full 4 years of our residency up front. So there was a significant cost to doing that. I do not regret spending this money at all, though, because now we have our residency and we didn't have to prove any financial thresholds like the normal residency programs. Also, the entire process was done in Mexico rather than having to do part of the application in our home country and then finishing it up in Mexico. So in summary, the first season in Mexico was quite expensive, and if you're thinking of retiring to Mexico, you should probably allow for your first year to cost more than you would expect. Okay, moving on to season 2. I'm on my own now, and I'm really trying to nail down my realistic cost of living since I put myself on a budget. I also want to get to know my community better and to immerse myself more in its rich culture. So first up is learning the language. I enrolled in one of the local language schools, the Lennon Institute, and I started my language learning journey. I continued this course throughout most of my time in Mexico, and I feel I'm now at a pre-intermediate level. Not perfect, but much further along than I was last year. Next, I looked at my transportation costs and started using the local collectivo instead of taxis all the time. I still depend on taxis for bringing home my groceries and going to Playa del Carmen or going to cenotes. However, by the end of the season, I'd figured out how to take the collectivos for trips outside of Puerto Morelos as well, so my transportation costs were greatly slashed this year. Instead of doing touristy excursions in season 2, I planned one longer self-guided trip to Valladolid. I stayed in an Airbnb and hired a driver to take me around to see all the sights. I didn't take any guided tours, and I honestly felt I got more culture and bang for my buck by planning my own agenda. I don't feel I missed out on much at all, as I spent almost 2 weeks there, and I was able to see what I wanted to see at my own pace and on my own terms. Well, the first month or so was more expensive because I had to pay to move my things from the storage unit to my Airbnb, as well as get my kitchen pantry set up. My monthly budget was much more manageable. As far as my food budget goes, I rarely ate at portside restaurants in my second season. Instead, I enjoyed seeking out and eating at local Colonia-side restaurants. The food I had up here was amazing, and I felt like I was supporting the local community more by frequenting these establishments. I was never lacking for delicious, varied, and economical food up here. I also made an effort to try different home kitchens for takeout and delivery, and this expanded on my choices for what to eat on those days I didn't feel like cooking. So what about entertainment? I attended free local cultural events, I went to flea markets, I spent a lot of time exploring the town on foot, getting to know my way around better. I went to the beach, ate beach vendor food instead of restaurants, took my own beach chair and grabbed a couple of beers at the OXXO instead of renting the pricey beach club spots and paying tourist prices for food and drinks. I also learned how to take the collectivos to Playa del Carmen, out the Ruta de los Cenotes, and that is a cultural experience in itself. I worked hard at my Spanish language studies, and I feel more confident interacting with the locals now. My residency gets me reduced rates at some attractions, so I took advantage of that while I could. I went golfing, visited cenotes, and I revisited Crococun Zoo, and so on, all at reduced rate. Another thing I did in my second season was to really look at what my real needs were, and I sold a lot of the things I thought I needed in season 1. Reducing my stuff meant I didn't need the added expense of renting a storage unit for the summer, as well as saving on the moving costs. Since I'm renting the same place next season, my property manager graciously allowed me to store a box there as well. My friend also let me store some things at her place, and since she lives there year-round, She's also looking after my plants while I'm gone. Huge shout out to Patty. I don't know what I would have done without her help. And speaking of friendships, I have met some amazing people in my second season. Being on my own, I was limited in what I felt comfortable doing. Going out to eat, taking excursions, going out after dark were all things I struggled with at first, being on my own. I did force myself to get out there though, and it paid off immensely because I have made some friendships that I value dearly, and now I have people to do things with. So my conclusion is, expect to pay more the first season you immigrate to a new country. The comforts of home help you adjust to a new culture gradually. Learn the language as it really does expand on your experience. Getting to know and being able to converse a bit with your local shopkeepers is priceless. The longer you stay in one place, the more you get to know it and the more comfortable you'll feel. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. Communities are amazing and people are friendly. So what's ahead in season 3 for me? I'm continuing my language studies while I'm home in Canada for the summer, so I'm hoping for more interactions with the Mexican people. I hope to learn about and participate in more cultural events that take place in my community. I hope to volunteer more in expat as well as local fundraisers. I volunteered a couple of times here this year, but I'm hoping to expand it on the next season, to feel that I'm giving something back to this community that has welcomed me and enriched my life. I hope to plan a longer trip to explore another part of Mexico as well, but a lot of that depends on Penny. Having a pet does limit your travel options, but I wouldn't be without her. She's an awesome travel buddy. Get to know my community better, enjoy more beach days, spend time with my friends, eat more amazing food, and generally just become a more active participant in cultural and local events. While I'm loving being home for the summer, visiting my family and friends, gardening, thrift store shopping, exploring my own country, I'm really looking forward to going back to Puerto Morelos in October. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.